Dear Abby, if you are interested in teenagers, you will print this story. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it doesn't matter because it served its purpose for me. A fellow and his date pulled into their favorite lover's lane to listen to the radio and do a little making. The music was interrupted by an announcer who said there was an escaped convict in that area who had served time for rape and robbery. He was described as having a hook instead of a right hand. The couple became frightened and drove away. When the boy took his girl home, he went around to open the car door for her. Then he saw a hook on a door handle. I don't think I will ever park out as long as I live. I hope this does the same for other kids.
Teenagers in the United States told similar stories to each other across the country in the mid-20th century. An ordinary urban legend. There were many of them, but what if it's not? Hello, my name's... And now we will try to figure out who the Hookman really was. Many urban legends have some kind of primary source, and we need to find it. But usually this is not so easily, especially if we are talking about some common story like this. But fortunately we have the internet, and the events of the legend took place not so long ago. So some material still can be found. The text at the beginning of this video is from a newspaper called Dear Abby. By the way, which exists to these days and whose puritanical bias has not changed in decades. This is interesting to us because it's the first mention of the Hookman in the form that became part of pop culture. It was written by someone named Janet, but I suspect that the author's real name was Karen. The message of this note is crystal clear. It lies in the fact that teenagers are not allowed. Well, in general, nothing is allowed. Especially, funny businesses. That's it, case closed. Thank you for your attention, everyone is free. Nah, it can't be that simple. It wouldn't be interesting. There had to be something before this note, something dark and evil, and it's there. And so we have an unknown killer with an unusual weapon who attacks couples in cars at night. I was able to find several versions of this legend, and they're all somehow connected with real crimes. Meet Carol Chessman, car thief, kidnapper, robber and rapist. Since childhood he had already committed small crimes. Go to prison, got out or escaped, and then he was caught again. He acted according to an established pattern. Stopping cars on highways, robbing them, and raping women if they were there. He also attacked passing women, whom he forced into sexual contact at gunpoint. The last time he was arrested in 1948. It was a very high-profile case that was widely covered in the media. Chessman claimed he was innocent, wrote several books about it, and even promised to name the real criminal. But in the end, he never did. In 1960 he was sent to the gas chamber. If Chessman used a pistol, not a hook, so where's the connection with our legend? Due to the fact that the description of the criminal given by his victim was repeated on the radio every few hours.
He's tall, big hands, dark hair, that's all.
Yep, just like in the note in Dear Abby. And because of the shape of his nose. No, he didn't use it as a weapon or hand people with it. Unfortunately, because if it were, this story would be much more interesting. Another victim described him as the man who is taller than her, but shorter than other men. Has brown hair and eyes, light brown skin and a large hooked nose. And if you consider that all this happened right in the middle of the 20th century, when the legends about the man with the hook were at the peak of popularity. then it's very likely that Chessman's story in some way influenced the legend. However, despite the fact that Chessman committed a huge number of crimes, he still did not kill anyone. So where did brutal massacres of people come from in this urban legend? This question can be answered by the second story, which is much horrifying. In 1946, shortly before the entire American media began actively writing about the Chessman case. In the city of Texarkana, which is located on the border of Texas and Arkansas, took place a series of attacks on people, and most of them were fatal. The victims were not related to each other in any way. The attacks occurred under different circumstances, using knives and pistols of different calibers. The killer seemed to choose his victims at random, but at the same time he was either very smart or did not act alone. The attacks took place in cars and in the victims' homes. 3 attacks were committed on couples in their cars on the so-called Lovers Lane. And this is very similar to the story of the Hookman. They were of different genders and ages. There were a lot of suspects, including some major people for the city. But everyone eventually had an alibi, which was confirmed. According to one girl who survived the attack, the killer was tall and had dark skin. This is basically all that is known so far. No evidence, no witnesses, nothing at all. In any case, the killer was never caught, and the attacks quietly stopped as suddenly as they began. It was assumed that the killer could be someone from outside the city, because at that time there were many out-of-town hired workers there. The criminal remained free, and who knows if he continued to kill in some other place. He was nicknamed the Phantom, and the events were called the Moonlight Murders, because they took place at night. And all this happened several years before Chessman began to attract public attention. Most likely these 2 stories eventually in some ways connected in the people's minds, and created the legend of a scary man with a hook, who wanders through dark alleys and outskirts of cities, brutally dealing with everyone he meets. However, it's important to understand this is all just speculation. It's quite possible that somewhere, once upon a time, someone was actually hung on a hook, who knows? There are a huge number of serial killers in the world who has not been caught yet. Maybe is he even in your city? Well, if he is still alive, he must be very old now. The only thing we can say with certainty is this legend had a huge impact on popular culture. Which is why we have a couple of cult movies and some books. Thank you for watching this video, but now my time is over.
Funkel, funkel, kleiner Stern, Kirby hat dich ja so gern.